Dhyananjana Shalakam Chakshakam Vidam Svachinudevam Namo Vishnukraya Guru Vishvaya Guru Shishmaro Maranam Namo Vishnukraya Krishna Krishnaya Bhadre Shishmaro Bhaktivedanta Abhinati Idinam Pancha Bhakti-Yogischa Kivasam Adikanam Bhavayo Vaishnaveyo Namo. First of all, I'd like to offer my obeisances to my Guru Bhagavad Om Shivaya Sasta Shishla Bhaktivedanta Arapa Samraj, my Harinam Guru, Om Shivaya Sasta Shishla Bhaktivedanta Arapa और उनको लोग Srila Prabhupada, Saraswati Thakur, and all his associates. I think probably everyone in this room, including Lakshmi, has known or been around Sripad Avadhu Maharaj longer than I've known or been around him. But I was fortunate enough to spend a couple of years traveling with him. So I got to see firsthand his Vaishnava behavior. First I'll tell a small biography. In 1946 January, in January 1946, he was born in California. I'm not sure what city. He was born in California. And as he approached his 20s, he was becoming more and more detached from material life. He was becoming very uninterested in what this world had to offer. And in 1968, while he was walking on Berkeley Ave, one monk gave him a card that had the Maha Mantra written on it. So he would keep it in his car and he would chant it every day as he was driving. And eventually this chanting started to take over his mind and he became very uninterested in prior activities. So then he was wanting to search for something more. And he asked his father, who was a commercial pilot, to take him to Australia. And on the way, he wanted to go to Hawaii, New Zealand, and then Australia. In Hawaii, he was very uninterested. He didn't like what it had to offer. So he went to New Zealand next and was hitchhiking. As he was hitchhiking, he was traveling with these two strangers, and they were eating meat, and he became his heart was very pained by that. So he decided to hitchhike all over, by foot all over New Zealand. He was thinking he wanted to settle there, but he felt called that he has to go to Australia. So then he went to Australia, and he was going all over Sydney and different cities, I'm not sure of the city names. And it was there that he met one devotee who had just opened an ashram. So they invited him to this ashram where he felt like, oh, finally I found my calling. And they're chanting this mantra that I was given on this card. And they started engaging him in the kitchen and making Simply Wonderfuls and all kinds of other, he loves Simply Wonderfuls so much. So then, later on, he received initiation from Srila Prabhupada via mail. And I had heard he was the first initiated disciple of Srila Prabhupada in the southern hemisphere. So then as time went on, later also in 1968, it was only just a month or two after he arrived. So then in 1981, he then decided he would go on a preaching tour in West Africa. I believe he went with Mukunda Prabhu and now Bhaktivedanta Shant Maharaj. So he was there for 9 years. And during this 9-year period, after this 9-year period, he started to hear about Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj. And then very shortly after that, in 1997, he came into the association of Srila Gurudev Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, where he became a Siksha disciple, and in 2004 took sannyas from Srila Gurudev in Navadvip. In 2018, is when I met Bhaktivedanta Abhinu Maharaj. I myself was in my 22, as he was when he was finding out about all this. And I had met one of his disciples in North Carolina, Krishadas, who shared with me all this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. And I became very interested when I went home later for those, it was like 6 hours from my home. And then for those 2 weeks I was praying continuously, please Krishna, you have to send me Guru. You have to send me Guru. I don't know how to find one, so you have to send me. And then next thing you know, this big hurricane came, so I had to evacuate. So I went to the devotee's house for 2-3 weeks. And it was at this time that Abhinu Maharaj was driving from Sydney, Texas, and then you go full farm. He drove, I don't know how, he drove from Texas all the way to North Carolina. I think it's an 18-hour drive. Small car. This little cute Honda thing. So the devotees were telling me, oh, he's coming for the second time only. He's driving all the way from Texas, so it'll be some time, maybe 5 p.m. he'll arrive. So okay, we have time. So that night I went to go to sleep on the couch, and then at 5 a.m. the door just flies open, and I see Abhinu Maharaj just standing there kind of looking around, checking out the place. And he walks in, everyone starts to panic, and just shuffling around, trying to organize things because we weren't prepared for 12 hours earlier, 18-hour drive, we weren't expecting early. So then they told me they have to prepare, get Vogue and prepare all these things. They told me, don't worry, he's going to take rest. You don't have to worry about anything. So I'd never been around a sannyasi before. I didn't know anything. I was maybe like 3 weeks into Krishna consciousness. So he went to this room to retire, take rest after. And right when the devotees left to close the door, he came out and sat on the couch. So I'm like panicking. I don't know how to serve a sannyasi. I don't even know what a sannyasi is. So I just sat on the floor in front of him and was waiting for any instruction. And he just looked at me very deeply for like 20, 30 seconds. I was like, so, you want initiation, don't you? I was like, yes. That's what I've been praying for. I said, okay. Your name is now Damodar, and in 2 weeks we'll do a ceremony. I was like, wow. Okay, 2 weeks or maybe it was the following evening. I can't remember. So, okay, what do I do? So shave your head, get ready. So that was how I met Srila Bhaktivedanta Abhinu Maharaj. And at this time I was in the military. I was based in the East Coast of North Carolina on the ocean. I met him in Asheville, North Carolina, so it was like 6 hours away. And he told me to come to India with him. And this was in September, October. He told me in February come to India with me for 1 month. So I didn't have any leave or anything that I was able to take from work. I didn't have any money, but I just put it on the credit card. I told my higher up, I said, I'm going to go for 1 month. He said, you only have 3 weeks you're allowed to take right? I said, you have to take care of it. Like, you have to put it in the books or something as I'm going. And so then, by some amazing arrangement of just wanting to follow Srila Abhinu Maharaj's desire for me to go with him to India, it was then Christmas Eve, and I was working a 24-hour shift. And at 11:59 p.m., I get an email on my government laptop. And suddenly, I get this email that says, your medical separation from the U.S. military has been processed. We're getting out in 2 weeks. So just like that, my whole contract was up. I don't have to worry about leave. I don't have to worry about bosses or anything like this. I can just go. I don't have any more contracts holding me back. So it was a wonderful arrangement of Srila Abhinu Maharaj. So then I came to India, and he ended up not coming for some time. I think he went to, I can't remember where he went. He went to some other country first, I think maybe in South America. But during this time in India, it was very like overwhelming. And I started to have really, out of nowhere, I just started to have really sharp doubts about the whole process and everything. And I was supposed to leave, my flight was in 2 days, and everyone that came with left. It was my first time in India, and then 2019.
Where were you staying?
I was staying, for some time I was staying in NBT, and then some time I was staying in Radha Beach. So then I was supposed to miss my flight. I was supposed to take my flight, but I ended up deciding to miss my flight. And everyone was left. I decided I've lost all of my inspiration. I've lost bhakti. I've heard the only way to get it back is serving Shri Guru, so I'm going to stay until he comes. So then he called me and he was like, "Oh, I'm arriving in 3 days." Perfect. So I went up to Delhi and met him at the airport, and we came to Vrindavan. And it was almost immediate, like all my faith came back, just immediately upon seeing him. And from then on, we traveled together, maybe 1 or 2 months in India, 1 month in India, and then we went to Bali. There's Atmaram Ishwara Prabhu, he's opened one temple in Bali. So we were staying there for maybe 2 weeks or so. And then he wanted me to go to China with him, but I couldn't manage that. Yeah, in Bali, we would have programs daily, maybe 10, 15, 20 people would come every day. We had programs in like a main area next to the airport, all the way up in Wood, and other areas of Bali. But he would like to go to the beach regularly and go for japa walks and do Sankirtan. So then later on, I came back to America, and he had just came back just 1 month later, so I heard he was at the farm in Texas, so I went to go see him. And I ended up staying at the farm as long as he was there, and then Sri Lokanath Prabhu, he told me we were going to do this Bhakti Beehive tour. It's like a grand via RV with a trailer, and we had this 20 by 20 like, octagon-shaped tent. We would set up an altar and we booked distribution in Sankirtan. We started in Texas and worked our way to Southern California and all the way up to like Washington, border of Canada, and back down towards Southern California. And then during that time, it was myself, Sri Lokanath, Devendra, some of you know, and other people were joining along the way. And
Where would you set up the Bhakti?
we were trying to get in contact with all different like festival venues and stuff like this. We're trying to get in anywhere and just set up. Sometimes we even just set up at empty parks and just made a whole festival around. But also, Srila Avadut Maharaj was with us for those whole 6 months. We were living in just one small, medium RV this whole time. So I really got to see what is his behavior, how does he act, how does he practice. And day in, day out, he was the same, all the way through. His chanting was so fixed, it was more austere than any of us. And he even in such older age, he was maybe 72, 2 at this time. He had more energy than any of us. And during this whole 6 months tour, for about like 8 hours a day, he would have us go do book distribution and Sankirtan on the streets. We would just set up, sometimes walking, sometimes setting up tapestries, sometimes going into really scary areas. So it was, he really had this mood of just wanting to give. He just wanted everyone to know about Krishna consciousness, to know about Mahamantra, to give these books to Srila Prabhupada and Srila Gurudev. Even once he had me go, me and the others, we found a whole strip of houses, maybe like each block was half a kilometer. We had to knock on every single door. We went up and down all of these strips, knocking on all these doors, offering books. If we found a garage sale, we would try and trade books for garage stuff. Just any excuse to get books out. So during that 6 months travels, I ended up in about halfway through, I ended up in a grudge where he told me that he doesn't plan on giving Diksha to anyone anymore. So if I want it, I have to take from Srila Bhaktivedanta Madhava Goswami Maharaj. So trusting him, I did this. And during this time of traveling with Avadu Maharaj is where we met in New Braj. My Guru Maharaj, Bhaktivedanta Madhava Maharaj. And before Srimad Avadu Maharaj had even told my Guru Maharaj that he wanted to hand me to him, my Guru Maharaj came to me and he said, "Do you know what your name means?" I said, "Yeah, it means waist bound by ropes of love and affection." It's just what I heard. He said, No. This means your Avadu Maharaj, he's going to untie this rope and give it to me for some time. And then I'm going to tie you back to him. And then it was only 3 days later that Srila Avadu Maharaj told him that he wants him to give me Diksha. So then, during this time, I then suddenly got sent off to travel with my Guru Maharaj throughout India on West Bengal Prachara for 6 months, including Kartik and Gaura Purnima. And then suddenly COVID came, and so I had to go. I was called in the middle of that. I was called by Rameshwar in Bali. He asked me to do Gujarati Seva for 1 month. So I went and I left some belongings. So then when my visa was expiring, the same time that COVID came. So I was thinking I'll go to Bali, get a new e-visa, and come right back for Prachar. But the day I arrived, 2 hours later, was lockdown started. So for 2 weeks it was nice, and Bali is wonderful. But I was feeling really deprived of association. My only place I could go was America because of my status as a citizen there. So I was praying so much as I was serving every day. The Thakurjis there, I was praying to them, please, I have to have the association of Avadu Maharaj. He's the only one I know in America that I can go to and receive Sadhusanga. And then, after so many canceled flights, suddenly I was taken back. And then I was traveling again with Shukaraju. I stayed there for maybe 2.5 months. And then we drove together in my van. We went to all the way from Texas to North Carolina and down to the Alachua Temple. So that was another 3 months at the farm, and another month and a half, or month. During the lockdown, we were traveling in this. I had this really small van. Somehow we squeezed in there, just the two of us, and traveling all around. But then I ended up, that van broke down, and I ended up being stuck in Alachua. Right when we got there, it completely totaled. I turned it on the next day and the van was totaled. No mechanic could fix it. So then Avadu Maharaj told me, okay, I'm going back to Texas. You stay here and do Pujari Seva. I was like, okay. So during this time, on and off, I got a new vehicle and meet him. Virginia, New York, Philadelphia, with him and Bhaktivedanta Shanta Maharaj, and we would go to different house programs and Harinam Sankirtan. I had heard that Sripad Avadu Maharaj was so attached to Harinam Sankirtan, like anything, you wouldn't believe it. When he was in the LA temple, he would go every single day, despite other people wanting to go or not. He'd go every single day. He was like the leader of the Kirtan party. And even when the LA temple closed, his natural renounced nature, he decided he'll just go sleep under a tree on the beach and he'll still go and do Sankirtan every day. So he lived like that, just going tree to tree in LA. And like anyone says, he really lived up to his name of Avadut. Everyone says it. One moment he's in China, next moment he's in America, next moment he's in India, he's not in America. He was really unconventional too. He did things his way, and if you didn't follow that program, you were left behind. But during this time of traveling with him, I the most humble personality I've ever seen. He was just very quiet, very internal. But if you asked anything, if anyone asked anything, he would give all of his time to answer in such a simple way. So then during this time of traveling with him, and there was some break, he went somewhere, and I was stuck in Alachua. And eventually, I came back to Mayapur as things started to become again. And he was staying in America, and so somehow, by some chance, it ended up that for 2 years I didn't get to see him. After being with him non-stop for like my whole beginning of Christian consciousness journey, and suddenly for 2 years I wasn't with him at all. And I wrote to him, this was at an earlier time, so I didn't know when, but I wrote to him at some point where I was not for quite a while. I messaged him, a voice message saying that I want to travel with you again. This has been too long, I can't handle it anymore. And his last message I ever got from him before we kind of stopped talking and all that. The last message I received from him was, "You already lived in hearts of Jack forever." So, then I heard about his cancer history. It's not looking so well. Suddenly I got a health insurance. He really wants to come to my word, but he refuses to go until he can walk without his walker. So then, I was thinking, I'll never see him again. How is it going to be possible? His condition's getting worse and worse. And then suddenly he calls me, or leaves me a message, and he's saying, "My cancer's gone, I feel all of my strength back, I'm coming to Mayapur, where should I stay?" I said, "Give me 30 minutes, I'll arrange everything." And so I got back to him, I arranged that he could come to Prabhu, that he could stay here, Bhaktivedanta Kunj. He messaged me back saying, "Okay, great, I'm coming in 3 days." He never told Sri Lokanath, he never told anyone else that he was with. On the very night before, he said, "Oh, Sri Lokanath, you have to book me an Uber because I'm going to India." He was trying to sneak out. Even in such so much sickness, it was still his nature was kind of like a little playful like that. Yeah. Yeah. I'll do it. Yeah. So then suddenly he came just a few days later, and his condition was okay, clearly getting worse, but we were thinking maybe the travel really toughened him out. But he was able to shower on his own at first. He was able to walk into the bathroom, sit up, and day by day it was getting gradually. Every day was something new. It was getting worse and worse and worse. And then about 5 days before he disappeared, we were outside, right here, and he was expressing that he no longer wants to live here. And all day he was just laying out in the field, and it was a huge storm. I hadn't seen a storm like this since, it was way early for the season too, but I hadn't seen a storm like this in a few years. Last time I saw a storm like that was in 2020. It was so impressive. And it was just lightning, without any rain, lightning for a couple hours. And we were just doing kirtan. Sri Lokanath, Devendra, and I were just doing kirtan. This was from mid-afternoon all the way until the evening, 7 or 8 p.m., something like this. We were just doing really gentle kirtan the whole time. And then eventually just a downpour was coming, so we got back up to the room. We were thinking he's choosing to go now, and now it's all the storm and everything. Oh my gosh. Then, just right outside. Yeah. So then, every day after that, the next day, he told us it's time to go. He said it's time for me to go. He said I have to go to the pathway. He needs the bathroom, the hallway, maybe he wants to walk or something. We didn't want to think that, you know. And then he was like, "What time is it? Is it day or night?" And then after that, he was saying, it's one choice or the other. I have to decide. So then he asked us to sit him up, and he's sitting fully erect in full lotus, his legs crossed, and he was holding this Rujapshadip, and he was trying to leave his body. And this would happen about 3 to 4 times a day, every day, leading up to when he actually left his body. So it's very mystical, this nature. Despite how sick he was, somehow when he was deciding it was time to go, he couldn't even sit up out of bed without some assistance. I think most everyone here saw it. But when he would decide he wanted to go, he would sat him straight up, and sometimes chakwa, sometimes with a Rajasha, and he would just close his eyes, and he would try to leave. So this was happening 3-4 times a day for the last 4 or 5 days leading up to his disappearance. And then came the time, it was 6:40 a.m. when he left on Mahadwarasi leading up to Gaur Purnima. Devendra and I were thinking we'll go and put it tomorrow, but we'll come back. We'll be back by 9:30, 10 a.m. latest. And right when we were one kilometer from Mamagachi, we got a phone call from Shilokanath saying turn around. Maharaj just left. So then we started making all the preparations. I went to Chaitanya Gaudiya Mahatma, requested a garland from Nityananda. The Panchatattva deities requested a garland from the Gujarati. And I called my Guru Maharaj and he told me to put this garland around his feet, put tulsi on his head, tongue, lips. So many devotees were coming, and everything suddenly was just getting arranged. They were thinking maybe samadhi will happen in the case of Jivodiman, and there was some stuff that came up that it couldn't happen. So it was decided what else to do. We have to do cremation, and we know that Bhakti Shruv Siddhanti Maharaj was also cremated when he left this world. So we're thinking, okay, this is no issue. There's no disrespect by doing this. So yeah, then this big procession came. So many devotees from KSG Bodhi Madhavan all over Mayapur came. Went on this big procession. I think many of you were here. We went on this procession with Sankirtan to Vigat. We did the cremation ceremony. Now I actually have his urn, his ashes is earned. And I recently was told that we could do his pushing samadhi to where the other samadhis are, just a couple samadhis to the left of Gauranga Setu Virgin Navati. So I'm not sure the date that's going to happen, but when we find out, I'll bring it to the group chats and arrange.
Also, Baba Maharaj told me that he saved some flowers from his heart, which they intend to use as Pushpa Samadhi in his miracle.
Yeah, so some flowers were saved, the flowers that were around his feet, and some of the cloth was torn off. And there's plans for there to be a Pushpa Samadhi in Nugapur, maybe other parts of America too, I don't know, but also there's 2 or 3 locations in Mexico where Abhiru Maharaj preached very heavily. He was even on radio shows and TV shows. So in Mexico also they're going to be doing Pushpa Samadhis as well. I want to hear from everyone else because I think all of you have had much more association than me. You've known him since, some of you have known him since the 70s, 60s. So I'd like to hear your offerings. And Shubha Rupas Chakras, Vididam Padma Vaishnavi.
just to give an idea who has sent reminiscence. Hari Sori Prabhu, who was brought to Krishna consciousness by Avadut Maharaj. He's here in Mayapur, and he's sent, I have not listened to it, he has sent a voice message. When he was in, it's described by Damodar Prabhu that there was a devotee in Australia that he met that happened to be Prabhupada's first personal servant, his personal servant in 1967, who was there. And he was, the first devotee that joined was an American in Australia. Also, in times of chronology, there are messages from both Shanta Maharaj and Mukunda Das Prabhu, who were with him in Africa. Also, Sadhananda Prabhu has sent something, and Jayanta Prabhu also, who were with him in the 90s when he was doing Gopal Bliss bars. So, and plus there are beautiful remembrances. One from Gopanandini Devi that I thought Nischintya, if she's here, would read. And is Rishikesh Prabhu here? Oh, okay, good, because he has the same accent as Prajendanandana Prabhu. And so we thought he could read Prajendanandana Prabhu's offering. And I wish Nischintya was here.
I can read it.
For
Sister Govindanandini?
Yes. Yeah, when Nischintya is here, we have such precious memories, yes, of him in the Rose. Well, actually, first it was a temple before the Venice Rose Temple on Dudley. There was a house there. So we were two, well, actually, including him, we were 3 of 7 trustees of the International Gaudiya Vedanta Society, 3 Prabhupada disciples. So we weren't, could never be a majority, but fascinating things, how he would behave, not only in meetings, but completely ignoring them, because he knew that Prabhupada didn't like bureaucracies, and this is what it was. It was the first time, because in ISKCON, in Prabhupada's time, they didn't have such things, and things went more quickly. But Maharaj's standards, he's Avadut, but he never neglected the mood and methods of his gurus. So no matter what was decided by a board, if they were contrary to those standards, he was Avadut in the sense he just completely ignored those and would do whatever he wanted. And he was always right. I can tell you that, just personally. Sometimes I would have, like, Maharaj, we have to do this or that, or he would do something just outrageous, and I'd say, Maharaj, and he would explain to me perfectly how, no, this is what Prabhupada would want, this is what Gurudev would want, and he would defeat me every time. He was always right, and I was always wrong. There's nothing I can say except that. But I'll tell you some of those incidents that were just, they were hilarious. He was really, the humor that he would invoke, was just by his nature, was just, one time my wife told me in an early meeting at IGVS, 7 trustees, she said, Prabhu, just look at his face during the whole meeting. Just look at his face. And so I did. I would just look at his face. Amazing. His eyes, those deep kind of what would you call them, turquoise, blue eyes. He would listen, and you could tell just by looking at his eyes, he not only understood everything that was said, he understood, more importantly, the intentions of everybody in what was said. And how would he express this? With his eyebrows. And this is what Nischindra wanted me to see. He had the most expressive eyebrows. I couldn't believe it. Just the way they were like, just one would go up and then another, or they'd go like this, and it was just so expressive. And you could tell just by looking at his face, you could see how he was seeing everything and reacting, and it was just so point on. I learned more from looking at him than looking at any of the speakers, or this is how I could tell what was in the meetings. Anyway, such an individual whose consciousness was so above ours, actually. Yet now I'm talking, and yes, this will just be my time, but your time, Avadhut Maharaj's time. The Rose Temple, I don't know how much I have to disclose here. I have to disclose some things. But it was a very unusual arrangement because there were many devotees that had come from England. And this is the first time in Southern California. And hey, it's Los Angeles, it's Venice Beach. And their first thought was, well, wait a minute, we're here in Hollywood. We got to preach, we got to go Hollywood, and so that meant, dressing real sharp, like that, getting $300 sunglasses, and, it's like, we got to preach to the people we want to preach to here. But Avadhut Maharaj, do you think he took into consideration this idea that this should be the mood and policy of the temple? Quite the opposite. He would dress very much like an Avadhut. And so, and sometimes in the meetings they go, hey, even though he's senior to all of us, he's a sannyasi, And Gurudev recognized him. And Prabhupada, but they would say, well, Maharaj, you gotta, get a more spiffy there. You gotta, like this. And he just looked, it was completely, they thought they were talking down to him. They didn't even know what was up or down, So, Nischintha and I would intervene and say, you have no idea, where his consciousness is. You should be a lot more respectful like that. And one thing I found out about in classes, now, when he would give class, at least at that time, in the Venice Rose Temple, he would be so self-effacing or reticent, that you would have to get very close to him to hear him. Even though, it doesn't matter microphone, because he would just, I won't say mumble, but he would just speak very softly. But if you were intelligent enough to do so, his classes were so high. Not just from Siddhanta perspective, he'd enter into Lila Katha, always with references from Shastra, but he would never do it, in a, how would I say, a way that would promote, himself. He was so reticent. So he never wanted to, it seemed, assume the position of which he was qualified for. He just always wanted to stay Avadhut. In so many situations in the temple, because there was one side that was thinking, okay, well, wait a minute, who's coming to the temple here? You have basically two broad categories. We were right on the borderline of Santa Monica and Venice. And up to the north into Santa Monica, there were a dozen yoga studios. And down to the south into Venice, there was another dozen yoga studios. And so who was drifting by, curious about this temple? All these yoginis. But what other element is there in Venice Beach? There is the very distraught homeless population, mostly men, that are really, really in a bad way. But Avadut Maharaj never bent on this. He said, Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda have come to save the most fallen. And it's our mandates from our gurus too. We were to go there. And so he would take the Sankirtan party, the Harinam Sankirtan party, daily. Would go down to the beach. We'd join him at times, but not as steadily as he was, every day. And of course, he would bring them back. The ones that at least wanted some prasadam. And then you had all the yoginis coming, right? And so the culture clash was just something else. It was funny. It was funny even at the time, But of course, there are those that say, well, wait a minute. These ladies, they have careers. They're yoginis. They're vegetarians. They have money. Whatever it was that there was thought that we should cultivate that side. But then on the other side, what do they have? They have nothing. They're not even well behaved or bathed. But Maharaj was adamant that we have to help these people. And how could I argue with them? Because even though I had a sentiment one way, he had arguments another way, which are easily able to defeat those sentiments. And sometimes he would even move into the temple. At one point, because the temple board would say, okay, we've got to be clear. We can't have any drug addicts. We can't have any crazies here. And then right after the board meeting, Avadut Maharaj would invite, 3 godbrothers, Prabhupada disciples, who were big book distributors and had a history and were presently distributing books. They just also happened to be cocaine addicts. And he just moved them into the temple. And I said, Maharaj. And then on the other side, he would invite certifiably, have been in institutions, crazy people, and I said, Maharaj, we just had a meeting. And he'd go, what is the temple for? What is the temple for? It's a hospital. These are our godbrothers, and they're distributing Prabhupada and Gurudev's books. What could I say? He would defeat me. And the crazy people, it's a hospital. If they stay here and engage, they will get purified. What is a temple for? What could I say? He was right. So that's what I'm saying on all these points, even though it looked totally bizarre. That was his Avadut thing. Actually, his policies were based very firmly in our Vaishnava traditions, So he was an Avadut, or very unconventional, according to any kind of mundane social standards, but his same Avadut nature kept him very much close to the heart of our Guru Varga. Anyway, that's enough for now. I actually thought of so many things, but I want to hear from. So, just to give you another example, I got to say this one because it was hilarious. It actually is very serious. But there was this boy born of Vaishnava parents, actually very well-known Vaishnava parent, and he moved him to the temple, even though he was barmy, as the British guys would say. But we had arranged for him to have counseling from the state of California, and he had a personal counselor who came there to the temple, and he was taking psychiatric drugs. And the counselor assured us that, if he just stays with his programs, I will get him an $850 a month allowance for life. we thought, oh wow, this is great for him, because then for life he'll be, safe, because he was a person who had been homeless, living in the streets and this and that, and his father was very happy and all that. But what did Avadut Maharaj do? He very perceptibly saw, and he was right. He said, this counselor of his, he's grooming him. He's a predator. He wants to exploit him sexually. I was like, what? Yeah, what? And then, when he came and, I got to see through Maharaj's eyes, I went, oh my God, this is true. And so he got him to stop taking all the psychiatric drugs, because he said, if you have faith in the process, if purification takes place, he won't need these things. He says, if you don't believe that, then what do you believe? And so he was challenging me. And I said, well, there's going to be $900 a month if he just goes along with the program for a little while. And he says, Krishna's maintaining everybody. Why do you have faith in something else in the state of California, especially when it comes with conditions like this, that he has to associate with a predator and he has to take psychiatric drugs? And I go, okay, Maharaj, you've defeated me again. What can I say? And everybody was upset. So many were. So he was Avadut to them, but actually, again, he was very much in line with our Vaishnava tradition. He's so pure at heart. Okay, there are a lot of other devotees that want to speak, and I do want to play these sound files. So I'll just ask you, who do you want to hear from first? We can have all the devotees speak, and then the sound files after. Okay, some of these I have not heard. Hari Sori Prabhu is the person who established the Bhaktivedanta Research Center in Calcutta. He was Prabhupada's personal servant for a while, and was a sannyasi, Prabhupada Kripa. I've not heard this. His wife Sitala just sent this, so I don't know what's going to be playing. He also has MS, and so it's hard for him to speak or walk. Sorry, but he has sent something in regards to Avadut Maharaj. It looks like it is 11 minutes long.
What comes after that?
Well, I'm just doing it chronologically. He met in Australia, so the next devotees are Shanta Maharaj and Mukunda Prabhu sent a very beautiful one. And what Mukunda sent was so beautiful. So Hari Sari first and then Bhagavat Maharaj.
How many minutes are the others besides?
Actually, Mukunda's is quite short, but it's so concise. Sadananda Prabhu is 14 minutes. And Shanta Maharaj wants to do a live one. So, okay. So, in what order I'd like you to direct Maharaj. Okay, here it goes. Very sorry. Welcome. Natural voice. You already has.
Hare Krishna. Namaskar to Krishna, Krishna Devachan, Patitanam Pavanekyo, Vaishnavedyo, Namo Namaha. So, I've been asked to say a few words about His Holiness Arvind Swami, formerly known as Upananda Das. In 1971, I moved to Australia from England, and at that time I was seriously seeking out some answers to the questions of why I'm here, why I'm subjected to death. And so when I arrived in Sydney, after only one day off the boat, myself and a small group of friends, we met the devotees for the first time, and I bought a Bhagavad magazine from them. After that, I went to northwestern Australia for 6 months to earn some money. Whilst I was there, I took advantage of the isolation of the place, and then I would read through the contents of the Bhagavad. At first, it didn't really become apparent what it was all about, but I knew there was something about this literature which was important, and so I kept it carefully whenever I felt the need. I would take the magazine out and read through the different articles. Like Christmas 1971, I was materially fried, and I decided that I needed to go back to Sydney, find these people, and see the magazine, and then see if I could get the answers to my questions. So I traveled back in January 1972. I had a stopover in Melbourne, come back to Sydney, and I had some takeout stay over, so I thought I'd take a walk around Melbourne, which I'm in transit to. So as I was walking around the city, I heard the takeout flag, and I came around into the city square, and there was a small group of devotees chanting, and so I was very happy to see them, and so I went up to one of the devotees that was selling Bhagavad magazines. So the person that I approached was Upananda. So when we got talking, I had one burning question. What is God? So I asked Upananda. So to his credit, he had read the 3 or 4 different issues that Bhagavad that he had with it. And as soon as I asked this question, he immediately went to the lead article from one of the Bhagavad Gita's, and Gautam Prabhupada gives a description of God in this article. And he immediately read it out. God is omnipotent, God is omniscient, God is everywhere, omnipresent, and God is good, and his name is Krishna. So I kept my finger in the spot in the magazine where the description was given, and I was quite excited that somebody came up next to me and asked me who God is. So he was trying to persuade me, and I told him that I'm actually on my way back to Sydney to find a temple that he was very enlightened, and he told me, well, we just started a new temple here in Melbourne, and you can come and stay with us. But I was at that point not quite on the surrender. But I like to remember he was a very gentle person, and very serious as well. So I went down by the river bank near the railway station, and I read through this description that Prabhupada had given, and I had what's sometimes called an epiphany. It was a moment of realization when I understood that God exists, is a person, and then I read Robert Tedden's name's Krishna. I thought, oh, this is amazing. He's even got a name. So, from reading that description, then I realized that this is true. God is everywhere, and if He knows everything, and He's in control of everything, then there's nowhere where I can go, there's nothing I can do, but He doesn't know where I am and what I'm doing. So I thought, if I actually accept this, then I'm going to have to join these people. So that was it. I did in fact join the temple a couple of weeks later, February 1972, and I met with the owner again later on. As the Christian consciousness movement expanded in Australia, and we had a good relationship. He was a very friendly guy, and serious about pursuing his devotional life. So he was the second person that I met, second devotee that I met. The first one was Madhavi Dasi, wife of Charan Das, in Utah Spanish school, and she had sold that first back to Ghana in 1971, and now Prananda sold me the second back to Ghana in 72. So that's just a little anecdote. Over the years, of course, we've done our services in different places, so I never had a chance to really work closely with him again. But I'm very glad to hear that he came into my ankle, and that he's successfully put his body here in Nadal. So that's all glorifying Sripad.
Now we're going to hear the glorification by Sripad Bhaktivedanta Bhagavad Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. I just wanted to say a few words about Sripad Avadut Maharaj. He was a very great soul, and I was very fortunate to have his association. I really appreciated how humble he was, and I used to think about emulating that humility or trying to learn how to be humble like him, because he was such a sweet, humble soul. But he was also completely independent and did whatever he liked, because he always liked to do what it was that served the Vaishnavas and served Krishna. He was a great saint, and I was honored to be present at his disappearance. My humble obeisances of Lotus Feet of Avadut Maharaj.
Moving to Prabhu, where you'll see the nature of his elevation just by hearing him. But he worked with Avadut Maharaj in West Africa for many years. He'll explain this.
From Alachua, Florida. Myself and Pujapad Avadut Maharaj we spent much time serving together over the years, beginning when he came to serve in Africa back in the 80s, and at that time I was preaching in Africa from 1979 going forward. Maharaj came both to Ghana and to Nigeria and rendered much service there in West Africa to help establish and pioneer Srila Prabhupada's movement. Maharaj also had spent a great deal of time when he first came to Srila Gurudev. We were able to spend some time together, very happy that both of us had realized that after serving Srila Prabhupada's mission in that way, that there was a great blessing that we would have now mutual service to Srila Gurudev. Maharaj was very much detached from the material world. He looked forward only to traveling and preaching and doing seva. And all the while he was doing this, he was very unassuming. He was not demanding any post or demanding any posture. He simply went about serving Gurudev in a very quiet and humble way, but inspiring many devotees throughout the world. Maharaj never thought so much for his own welfare. He visited places and only thought if that place was suitable to possibly do some seva to Srila Gurudev. He never considered his own comfort. If he came and there was no place to stay, Maharaj would accept the most humblest of accommodations, whether it meant sleeping on a couch in the front room or somewhere in a small corner. He would take some rest. So Maharaj obviously was in our presence demonstratively such a great example of what it means to be a sannyasi. So I'm praying ongoing that Maharaj will bestow his mercy on me and remember our fond times together and the seva that we've done together, and perhaps give me just a drop of his qualities of renunciation and humility. These are two very foundational things to the teachings of Mahaprabhu. Trinadapi Sunichena, and Mahaprabhu was Vairagya Pradhan, means he was by foundation taught detachment from the world. So Maharaj was a complete exemplar of that. And again, because he was so unassuming and so humble, you never felt it by him posturing himself like that. It was just naturally observable in his behavior and in the way he conducted himself with others. Though he was very senior to me, actually, he always treated me with the utmost respect and love and affection, just like a brother. So again, I'm praying to Maharaj that he may bestow his causeless mercy and that he may have found complete success in his bhajan siddhi at the lotus feet of Shri Radha Krishna Yugal and Mahaprabhu. Jai Puja Paravadut Maharaj Ki Jai.
Jayanta Prabhu, he also sent a written offering. Should I read that?
That's a lie.
Oh, you want Shant? Yeah.
Shanta Maharaj wants us to call him.
He wants to call him.
Okay. So, could you say something about Jayanta Prabhu, who he is?
So in the 1990s, Shripad Avadut Maharaj, he had a lot of qualifications. Even though he was a renunciate, he could make money very easily, and he had a business, a very successful business, Gopal Bliss Bars, and even Ziggy Marley came and invested his presence. He was packaged along with the hemp Bliss Bars that were going out there, and he managed to get him to market them for him. But he had a very ongoing business, a big business that he did with Jayanta Prabhu, who and Sadhananda. Yeah, the three of them. That's when I first met Avadut Maharaj, and I was impressed mostly that he had found Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj and learned first about Gaur Govinda Maharaj from him. And and so he had this business. It made a lot of money. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. With the money he made at the end, when he decided to just retire and surrender to Gurudev completely on the path of sannyas, he, instead of paying the taxes that were due, that's how Jaiva Dharma was first published. Avadut again.
So here's the remembrance of Jayanta Prabhu, who is the business partner like that. He said, unfortunately, I won't be at the April 6th remembrance of Avadut Maharaj festival. Kindly accept this humble, loving offering at his lotus feet for that occasion. I remember on one Badger festival, before Maharaj took sannyas from our most beloved Srila Gurudev, after Mangalarti, devotees would start clamoring for rides on the way to the intimate morning walk site. By Krishna's divine arrangements, Maharaj and I found ourselves without a ride. Fortunately, one very late devotee, I forgot who, offered us a ride. When we got there, from a distance, we could see the backs of numerous devotees. We paid our dandavats towards them. Then, Srila Gurudev and the fortunate morning walk devotees reversed direction and were moving towards us. As we moved towards them, and we could see Srila Gurudev leading the assembled devotees, with the cows on either sides of them, grazing and gazing, having darshan of Srila Gurudev and their devotees, ensuring their successful next births. We can see Srila Gurudev looking at us intently. Immediately we paid our loving dandavats again, and as we got closer to Srila Gurudev, he said, looking at Avadut Maharaj, "Oh, Upananda Prabhu, you're just now arriving from the Blissfar factory?" I could see Avadut Maharaj's face turn pale as we looked at each other. Since Maharaj was my senior in age, seva, and bhakti, Gurudev awarded him the sas, the chastisement. But in actuality, it was Srila Gurudev's causeless mercy that eventually led to Maharaj taking sannyas. I've since learned from this, when I too received my chastisement from Gurudev, that even though, as conditioned souls, it's more palatable to receive a pat on the head, the spiritual reality is that being chastised by Sri Guru is more potent for our edifications, as we are then reminded of our true constitutional position as a servant of the servants of the servant, and less likely for us to become puffed up with praises and always reminding ourselves to be a humble fool at the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Hare Krishna. With love and affection, Jayanta Das. That's his speech.
Jayanta Prabhu is responsible for many videos of Gurudev's tour in Southern California and Badger. Many of the older videos, and also in India. San Francisco, etc. He did many videos.
Shasha Maharaj, is he available or not? Shasha Maharaj. Shasha Maharaj. Try.
I also have an offering from Vrindavan Vasani and
Maybe we can go through Gopanandini Mataji's qualification. You can read it. That you have Gopanandini's ready?
Vrindavan Vasani.
should just read Rogers already?
No.
Are you ready?
Dad, do you know where it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
State of mind is ready.
Okay, let's go for Nandinis. Sit down.
Go to Rogers and then Velocity.
Oh,
Three
okay.
Nandinis, and the other right accent.
Okay. Yeah, we can let her go first with Vrindavan Vilasini. Because you're ready, right?
Just have them ready so we don't have to wait.
Okay, this is a collection of offerings from Nandini Jagana in Switzerland and Vrindavan Vilasini. This is for the disappearance of Sri Govinda Ghosh, prayers for Avadut Maharaj on the occasion of his farewell ceremony. Thakur advised, "My friend, you are being washed away in material nature's waves of time. Please try to understand that you are the eternal servant of God, then everything will stop and you will be eternally happy." Srimad Bhagavatam 4:11-21 purport, those who are inclined to material activities remain in the material sphere, but persons who engage in devotional service reach the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, where there is neither birth nor death, nor different varieties of life, under the influence of the law of karma. The best interest of the living entity is to engage himself in devotional service and go back home, back to Godhead. By Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Srimad Bhagavatam 4:17-30 purport, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings, my dear Lord, whatever I have, even my mind, the center of all material necessities, namely my home, my body, and whatever I have in connection with this body, I now surrender unto you. You are not completely independent. You are now completely independent to act however you like. If you like, you can kill me. If you like, you can save me. In any case, I am your eternal servant, and you have every right to do whatever you like. My dear living entity, why are you being carried away by the waves of Maya, as stated in Srimad Bhagavad Gita 1861, Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hrideshe Arjuna Tishtati Brahmayan Sarva Bhutani Yatra Rudani Maya. Sorry if I messed that up. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. The living entity is carried in the machine of the body through so many species of life on so many planets. Therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur asks the living entity why he is being carried away in these bodily machines to be placed in so many different circumstances. He advises that one surmounts the waves of Maya by surrendering unto Krishna. When Indra came to Lord Brahma this time, Lord Brahma told him to stay with him for another 5 years and hear from him. In this way, after Indra had resided with him for 101 years while observing a vow of celibacy, Lord Brahma imparted to him the supreme instruction. He said, this body is mortal and within the grips of death. In reality, the soul is Shariri, the embodied. The gross body of 5 elements and the subtle body composed of the mind, intelligence, and false ego are merely 2 coverings of the Atma. When the soul attains his constitutional position and thus becomes pure, whatever he hears or sees is all blissful. He is the topmost person. Eternally in union with the Supreme Soul, he resides in the spiritual realm, immersed in the bliss of divine play. By the mercy of Sri Guru and Sri Bhagavan, the meaning of all the scriptures is realized by one who strictly cultivates one-pointed bhakti for Vishaya Vigraha Sri Bhagavan, who is the object of bhakti, and Ashraya Vigraha Sri Gurudev, who is the abode of bhakti. The Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless Purana. It is most dear to the Vaishnavas because it describes the pure and supreme knowledge of the Paramahamsas. This Bhagavatam reveals the means for becoming free from all material work, together with the processes of transcendental knowledge, renunciation, and devotion. Anyone who seriously tries to understand Srimad Bhagavatam, who properly hears and chants it with devotion, becomes completely liberated. Adopted from the Gaudiya, Volume 8, Number 5. If we have an idea of the infinite broadness and depth of the Absolute, how can we value anything here? This world is all relative. We must not allow ourselves to be cowed down by any events here. We must go forward in our march towards the truth. We may fail anytime, anywhere. It does not matter. It may be our Master's will. Still, we have no other alternative than to try for His mercy, His grace. Srila Bhakti Rakshak, Srila Goswami Maharaj. Whatever we know about birth and death in this world does not apply to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. In fact, instead of saying birth and death, the Vaishnavas use the terms avibhav and tirabhav, appearance and disappearance, prakat and aprakat, manifested and unmanifested, and so forth. By using the words birth and death, a kind of mournful mood, full of disbelief, grief, and lamentation arises in the heart. But such moods do not arise when we use words like avibhav and tirabhav or prakat and aprakat. Spoken at Sri Chaitanya Mat, Sri Dham Mayapur by Srila Bhakti Pragan Keshav Goswami Maharaj, Harikatha found by Dasanudasi Anandini Jagana in Vrindavan Vilasini. And here's Anandini Jagana's personal offering. My garland of flowers to our beloved Avadut Maharaj and friend. I wish I were there in Navadvip with you now, dear most Avadut Guruji, and spend some more of those precious moments in your inspiring presence. But you know that spiritually I am always with you. The gift you gave me to accept my small services while staying in our home for 3 months is so precious and unforgettable and will stay in my heart forever. Thank you for your help on the Bhagavad Gita for children's and the Book of Krishna's wonderful incarnations and expansions. You have accepted me like a father helping his daughter to complete and finish her schoolwork. I have great respect for your sincerity and honesty and your firm faith, Srila Prabhupada and Srila Gurudev and Lord Nityananda and Mahaprabhu. You propagated the holy names in the whole world and encouraged everyone. Always pray to Nityananda Prabhu and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Simple living and high thinking was your motivation, which you lived boldly and naturally at a daily basis. You have been an amazing example of Vaishnava etiquette and such a great friend. You never criticized and always supported everyone in a wholesome understanding of their true self as an eternal individual soul. Your approach and attitude was always so generous and welcoming. You never tried to put yourself above others, but showed them the right way of teaching by your own example and your causeless mercy. Yes, you are a true Avadut. I tried to hide my feelings, but now I cry and wash your lotus feet with my burning tears. Stay blessed, my friend. May all our great Guru Varga protect and guide you. May Srila Prabhupada and Srila Gurudev Narayan Maharaj shower their limitless mercy upon your great soul. Sri Krishna speaks in verse 7:14 of Bhagavad Gita, my divine energy Maya, consisting of the 3 modes of nature, is very difficult to overcome. But those who surrender unto me cross over it very easily. Hare Krishna, Dasanudasi Anandini Jagana.
So now we're going to, Rishikesh Prabhu will read Brajendra Nandan Prabhu's offering to Avadut Maharaj.
In New Braj, we are feeling a mixture of both sadness and happiness regarding the departure from this world of our dear Avadut Maharaj. Sadness because we will be deprived of the association of such a humble and exemplary devotee as Maharaj. Happiness because he departed so auspiciously in Mayapur on Mahadvadas during the Navadvip Parikram, surrounded by so many senior devotees. We will surely miss him. He was such an inspiration to all of us, dedicated example, and he was loved by all who had the good fortune of knowing him. Shripad Avadut Maharaj Ki Jai. No, actually I only knew Avadut Maharaj for a short time. I think I first met him in America, but I didn't have so much personal association with him.
Okay, and now we'll hear the offering from Gopanandini Mataji.
The whole world is feeling a loss at the departure of our dear friend, Shripad Avadut Maharaj. My heart feels great sorrow. Surely, Srila Prabhupada and Srila Gurudev have important service for him everywhere or elsewhere. He embodied kindness and he lived the tenets of Krishna consciousness. He made no artificial show for the benefit of others, but quietly practiced what he preached. In this way, he was exemplary. His purity inspired us all. I will always remember Sripad Avadut Maharaj, Gopanandini Dasi.
I don't have so much to say. But the Damodar Prabhu said that there's... He had... Huh? Was there anything that
She was he told me that his face expressed better what was going on in the meeting than the meeting itself.
I guess I first met Srila Avadut Maharaj as Upananda Prabhu when Gurudev, I think it was his second tour to Los Angeles, and we lived there in Los Angeles. So I had booked the Masonic Hall right next to the LA Temple for Gurudev to speak. But then a devotee from Badger said, well, if it's there, I won't go because I don't want to be involved in any controversy. So then I thought, oh, okay, let me find someplace else. And then my daughter knew of this other place called the Boathouse in Marina del Rey. And so I went and booked it for the program, and I met Avadut Maharaj because he was the one that was going to pay for it. So when I met him there for the first time, and he paid for it, and I said, oh great, what's next? And he said, I don't know. What do you mean? I said, aren't you organizing the festival? And he said, no, I thought you were. And that began our managing seva for the Los Angeles yatra. And it didn't really change too much after that. But we served on the board of directors. Govinda Dasi was kind of facilitating that project. And Gurudev had sent my husband and I to do that seva. And I was living in Badger at the time. And did you tell that part of the story? How Gurudev had sent you to go and help with Los Angeles? And then he said, well, what about my wife and son? And he said, your wife should go to Los Angeles and help you, and Madhukar should stay in with Brajendra Nandana and Gopanandini. And that began the first boys' ashram. And
It's 14.
yeah. And anyway, and I was happy to get a direct instruction from a pure devotee, but it was so hard to leave New Braj, because that was like the happiest place in my life, was living there. But so then I went back down to Los Angeles, and Govinda Dasi and Jagmohan had just purchased a house, and then they asked us to be on the board of directors along with Avadut Maharaj. And I think they thought that we were like the easiest Prabhupada disciples to be able to work with. But little did they know that, and she was actually very fair. She had 3 Gurudev disciples on the board and 3 Prabhupada disciples. And so, even though we were kind of the easiest and mellowest Prabhupada disciples that they knew, we kind of always tried to tip the scale of balance from one extreme to the other. And Avadut, so we lived together in the temple with Maharaj, and he was always so strict with himself, but liberal with others. And I kind of always had a motherly feeling towards him and all the brahmacharis at the temple. And I remember in the winter, I would say, Maharaj, I'm going to get you some socks. And he would say, no, if you get me socks, then I'll have to wash them. and he was such an example of just austerity, but with heart, you know. And every morning he would be there for Mangal Arti, and he would always bow down and do his full Dandavat pranams, even though you knew it was like hard for his body to do that. But he never moaned, he never, you know, he just was so exemplary in his austerity and in his Vaishnava qualities. And in Los Angeles, even though we were the board of directors, for some reason, we were lucky if we got like a 20-minute darshan when Gurudev was in Los Angeles at the end, right before we went to the airport. But in those short darshans, Gurudev would express so much faith in Avadut Maharaj as the resident sannyasi there. And I remember I noticed that. And, you know, right before leaving, he would say, you know, I can't remember his exact words, but basically entrusting things under his care. And I remember Avadut Maharaj just touching his feet with all humility. And I guess that's my offering. I feel such great fortune to have served together with him.
It's too comfortable? At least the deity curtains are closed. just to give you an example of Sripad Avadut Maharaj's light, and I mean that not just light, floating light, but brilliant humor. He lived in the temple right next to the deities. There was a room. But up in the tower, there were two ladies, Gurudev's disciples, who were very expert at bringing people to the temple. But the way they do it was unusual. They'd go out in short shorts, skating in the Venice Beach and bring them back. Anyway, one time, Avadut Maharaj came to me and said, Rishabdev, I don't think it's so proper. You know, the reason these girls, I'm here and I see what goes on. Actually, he saw what goes on very clearly, at all times, everywhere. But he said, the only reason they're at Mangala Arti is because they're just getting back from their preaching, whatever that is. This cannot go on at a temple. But he said it not with any kind of anger or harshness or anything like that, but kind of with a humor. He was smiling when he said it. And it wasn't that he didn't have respect and even, you know, affection for the girls. He did. But he knew that the standards had to be kept. But the way he said it was just so humorous. It was. Just his mood was not one of being harsh, but just in seeing the humor of the world. Okay.
He was always so even-tempered, but kind to everyone. But he kept a very strict standard for himself.
There's a Sadhananda. Will you do this? It's a recording. Okay, you see it right there.
It's kind of long though.
Speed it up.
It's 15 minutes. I think.
Do you read yourself? I think you should play it. You should play it.
Okay. Okay.
The longer you wait to start, the longer it will take.
Okay. Yeah, it's loading.
Tell everybody who it is.
Oh. Sadhana Prabhu has the farm in the Texas Panhandle or near, and he had
Upananda and Jayananda Prabhu and Sadhananda. I met them in the middle 80s in San Diego. They had a business there which became very successful, as we were told, a Bliss Bar factory, we talked about it, and eventually they got a contract with Whole Foods. Anyway, there were three partners with Jayanta Prabhu, Upananda Prabhu, and Sadananda Prabhu, who now is in charge of the farm in Texas. And they don't have the Bliss Bar business anymore, but they have what's called Gopal's Foods. So Upananda Prabhu had much association, gave much association to Sadananda Prabhu, who's speaking now.
Jai Sripad Avadut Swami Ki Jai, my Dandavat Pranams. I wanted to thank him for having had quite an impact on my life. We have worked together for like some 40 years, and he first came to the San Diego Temple in California. At that time, he was a simple brahmachari, not demanding any respect, not putting up a high profile, but he had a certain purity about him. I understand that he was one of the first devotees to join in Australia, and since then had done a lot of preaching. He spent time in Africa with Brahmananda Swami and others, and always preaching and traveling. And so he would leave the San Diego Temple and go somewhere else, and then he would come back. At one point, he started the commercial BBT party with Rasikananda, and going to temples, and from there to bookstores, New Age bookstores. And after they had gone to pretty much all the temples, they thought, well, how do we go to all the other cities? And since I had a motorhome and a car, they invited me, and I canceled my India trip at that time. And we toured many cities, and he would always be the one researching. He would always do a lot of research, how to preach, where to go. And we sold some $20,000 worth of books and paraphernalia per month, doing this for a few months. He even wanted to go to the Borders bookstore, that big chain, to the head office, and they ended up taking the Bhagavad Gita, and the BBT would sell a lot of books to the Borders bookstores over the following years from that one contact that we had made. But after returning to San Diego and calling on some of the accounts that we had sold to, and did not get any reorders because they apparently were not moving fast enough, we thought, well, if we had something people could consume, like prasadam, which is spiritual, the books are spiritual, then they would purchase some more. So we started a bliss bar business, Govinda's Bliss Bars, with a sesame seed bar and some sugar. And later, of course, we refined it more and more. And we got some 30 accounts in San Diego. Someone else contacted us with a health food store in Palm Desert, and then called us back a couple of weeks later, can I become a rep for you? And all of a sudden, we were getting 30 new accounts per month, and the business expanded to a point where we had to move out of the temple kitchen. And he would always be the steady support and the pillar of doing whatever was needed. I would be more on the production side of things, and he would be more on the accounting side. One time, my parents were visiting from Germany, and I took some $6,000 out of the account to buy a motorhome for them to move around, and he didn't like it too much, but he was always quite tolerant. And because of his tolerance, he would be able to tolerate me, which was not an easy thing. And even at one point, we had gotten a manager into the business who I guess had some eye on becoming a part owner, and politics were started in the business, and they try to convince him to renounce and become a sannyasi in the long run. And so it wasn't difficult to convince him that way, because the business and with the accounting side, it had just gotten too big for him, and it wasn't really his forte. He was more into spontaneous preaching. And so he left the owner position at Govinda's Bliss Bars. Later on, we bought some land by Mount Palomar, 9.5 acres for $50,000, and he would come quite often. He liked the project. He liked the idea of farming and self-sufficiency. So then 10 years later, we sold it for $360,000 because the land prices had gone crazy. And we looked around. Badgers seemed to be too unstable. We ended up buying 100 acres in Texas. He was there as a director and supporting our endeavors, doing the signatures when it was necessary, and over the years kept visiting, and in later years more and more, and staying longer. But longer usually only meant like a week or two, the most. And you never knew. He could be leaving after coming here and staying for 3 days because he was overdue. It was unpredictable. Because he had gotten sannyas in 2005, but he kept staying as a director on our nonprofit. But he would travel a lot, and he would send people to the farm. And then after Srila Gurudev left, sometime he also started giving shelter, initiation to other devotees. And a lot of devotees that came to the farm came here because of Avadut Swami. And he would always be wanting us to do more farming and more gardening. The business that we had, Gopal's Health Foods, took a lot of our time, and we were not so much dependent on other forms of income and self-sufficiency, but because we did want to develop those. And he was always very supportive and on a regular basis sent all kinds of links to a gardening project that would be a bit unusual and but quite promising. So when he would stay here, he would always come to the programs. He would never miss a Mangalatik. If later on he did, it was not a good sign. I would get worried and I would go up and see him, thinking that he might not feel well. That's how steady he was and determined in spiritual life and very not so interested in the material aspect of it all. And taking us out on Harinam as much as possible. Basically weekly, on weekends at least, we would go out, and we would not do that type of preaching if it were not for him, because we were always so busy in the business and developing the farming side here. Then later on, during the pandemic, he stayed for several months, which was very unusual, the longest, and it was very successful. So much hearing and chanting was done, and preaching and giving shelter to others. So he wanted to go quite far. At one point, he was on a very special mission to get Lord Nityananda. He went to see a sadhu in South India who was promoting special worship and meditation on Lord Nityananda Prabhu, and Avadut Swami was right into that. But because of some cancer that he contracted, he ended up coming back here. And at that point, it was to a point where it really affected his health. And one time, an Indian gentleman came here to the farm out of nowhere, and I took him around, and then I introduced him to Avadut Swami when I found out that he was a doctor, and he was very humble and immediately wanted to help him, and invited him to come to his hospital in Lubbock to get his experts to see what Avadut Swami had and what could be done. And they had a whole scheme developed of operations and how to help him. But when explaining of what to do, and that, the one side of his head with no ear would look like a wall, he was not into it. Like, he was not into the Western medicine, the Western doctors, and these operations. And he kind of took it that's at least how I saw it, that if it was Krishna's will or decision for him to suffer like that he would accept it. Even though he would try all kinds of natural cures, it was not successful. And then ultimately he ended up with Trilokanath at an island in Florida where he had taken him. And then he must have felt at one point that he did not have many more days, and immediately got a ticket for going to India. And Trilokanath said, I will go with you, and Sahadev Prabhu as well, and they only had 2 days to do so. They finally made it to Mayapur, and you know the rest. But his strength to take something as Krishna's direction and not try to intervene too much was quite remarkable. I don't know if he even took painkillers, but he took it kind of like a hero, down to the last end, but with humility and strength, spiritual strength. And so we are all very touched by his behavior of being humble and unassuming, and so encouraging to devotees, always looking at the spiritual side and being most merciful, even to the most fallen people that most temples would not accept. If they had just a little desire, he would accept them till And so that way, everyone was really touched, and he was kind of like our father in that sense, always being very supportive, and we are very grateful for his association, for his help over the years, and we are very convinced that he has made great use of his life and became very successful in Krishna consciousness. Sripad Avadhut Swami Ki Jai.
No, he took just any natural, like Ayurvedic type stuff. I just had two very quick memories. One popped up when Nischintya mentioned his back. I mean, everyone saw the shape of it. And I've had severe back pain for more than a decade now, so I was asking him once, like, what do I do? And he said, oh, you just need the mercy of Guru and Nityananda. And I kind of challenged him, like, prove it. And he said that he was walking with Srila Gurudev, and he held an umbrella for Srila Gurudev, and Srila Gurudev paused, and everyone behind, the whole party stopped. And he looked at him and said, I have so much respect for you. And Avadhut Maharaj said, no, Gurudev, please, I have so much respect for you. And then Avadhut Maharaj told me that he woke up the next morning and all of his back pain was no more, and he never had back pain since. That was the last of it, despite its condition and everything. So, yeah, I was amazed hearing that. He didn't tell me the year, but it was in Srila Gurudev's time, that's all I know. And then one other memory I just had from the Bhakti Beehive tour, we were in Oregon, I believe it was Oregon, and we ended up, he wanted us to go to this marijuana party to do preaching. So we went to this big mansion marijuana party, and we set up a kirtan party, and we just started doing it, and started doing kirtan, but they weren't the most receptive, you can say. So then we had made a bunch of prasad, so we just offered them prasad, took our pots, and got out. Cooking pots. One other memory was in Oregon. There was this band, this devotee band, Butter Thieves. And they were doing some sets, so we were like tagging along with them so we can do some preaching book distribution also. And we asked to do, for Sripad Avadhut Maharaj to speak something before the set, and by some arrangement, they were saying, no, the managers were saying the set has to go first. Anyway, so then it was 10 p.m. and we're like, oh, like it's too late now, you can't speak. Who are you going to speak to anyways? And he kind of looked down, and then he like glanced upwards like this, and he said, I can speak to the stars and Narad Muni. And then he like smiled really big, and then he went out and he saw everyone was sleeping on the floor, and he was just sitting like this, and from 10 p.m. to about 11 p.m. he was speaking. And I think me and Devendra were the only ones awake out of the 20 people there, and we were just like sitting. But I thought how amazing, he had so much faith in Hari Katha, and he didn't care what time it was, where it was, who the audience was. He just wanted to share Hari Katha. It didn't even matter if people were sleeping on the ground right in front of him. It wasn't a matter to him. So these small memories popped in my head while everyone else was speaking, so I wanted to share it.
Can I share something really quick from my personal experience?
Hare Krishna. So Avadhut Maharaj came to my house twice when I used to do programs there. And the first time we had like a big normal group, plenty of warning, you know. The second time Gaura Sundar calls me and tells me, Avadhut Maharaj is coming to your house. I said, when? He said, now. I said, why? Right? And he said, I don't know, he wants to come. So he had just gotten off a plane. He got in Gaura Sundar's car, drove to my house. I had no time to do any proper preparation, not to invite anybody. Anyway, he gets there. There were, I think, maybe 3-4 young men there. One was my nephew, I remember, and one was Brudge, this kid who lived in my house, like a new devotee that rented a room for me. Anyhow, so Maharaj gets there, he looks exhausted, he sits on the couch, and he says, you know what, I think I need to rest for about a half an hour. So I popped up, I said, okay, let me get a sleeping mat ready for you. He said, no, I'll just rest here. So he just laid down on his back on the couch for like half an hour and slept, and me and my friends, my nephew, my roommate, we all just looked at each other and waited. We were quiet. About a half an hour he woke up, spoke some small Harikatha, and I remember something he said that I didn't believe, but I felt for sure he said it for the benefit of my nephew and my roommate, who both I knew were struggling with things young men who party struggle with. He said, I couldn't resist sex desire if I wasn't old. He said this. Now, I don't believe it, and I don't think it's true, but I think he said it for their benefit, like to maybe kind of help them feel like, your struggles are normal. And one other thing, rewind, long before I ever knew what Krishna consciousness was, not that I do now, but anyway, it was maybe like 2002, 2003, and I became a raw food vegan. And I started buying these Bliss bars. I found them in a local independent health food store in Long Beach, and they were so good. I remember there were 3 flavors. There was like a tropical flavor, and maybe a green flavor, and maybe like a beet flavor. Something, I don't know, but I would go and I would buy like everything, right? Especially if I was traveling, I would just take them because like, what else am I going to eat? If I don't find fruits and vegetables and these Bliss bars, I'll starve. Anyway, so then fast forward some years later, I'm still raw foodist. I get a job in this other grocery store where I worked, and the owner said, you know the products, do you want to work here? And I said, yes. So one of the products they sold there were the Gopal bars. I remember there was Italian, some Asian teriyaki maybe, and an Indian flavor. And same thing, and I used to get a discount because I worked there, so I would buy them by the case, also eat tons and tons of them. And then one day, Sadhananda came in because we were buying from him. I guess he was traveling on a sales tour or whatever. And he came in and I met him. And then years later, I saw him and recognized him at Badger Fest, and he was giving samples of his Gopal bars out. And it wasn't until sometime later, I'd stopped being a raw foodist, that I found out that this operation was devotees. So in some way, Avadut Maharaj contributed to my contact with Krishna consciousness, because Bliss bars and Gopal bars, I was totally chowing on the prasadam. So all glories.
I also just remembered one more thing, an expression of his humility. He wanted to go to Ekachakra on Nityananda Trayodasi, and there was absolutely nowhere to stay. But he was willing to stay under a tree anywhere. And he told me that he ended up staying in an abandoned cow shed on the side of the ISKCON, and they didn't give him anything, like anything more than that shed. So he just packed up some hay together and laid on that for the night this was many years back. I can't remember the year, but he just happily gathered up some hay and slept there, just to be in the abode of Lord Nityananda on Nityananda Trayodasi.
2 minutes I'll glorify. If you have time. Okay. Let's Maharaj. Hare Krishna. So I didn't have much interaction with Shripad Avadut Maharaj. But in our Vedic scriptures, there are many glorious pastimes mentioned how to leave body. Vrittasur, we know how Vrittasur left his body. In the Bhagavatam we see. Then we see Bhishma Pitama, how Bhishma Pitama, looking at the moon-like face of Shri Krishna, leave his body. In Bhagavatam it is mentioned how Krishna's sweat is coming from Krishna's cheek, and he describes as a lotus flower, and how he meditates on that flower, that moon-like face of Krishna, and he leaves his body. And then there is glorious, we all know, Srila Haridas Thakur. How Haridas Thakur when when Govinda brought Jagannath Prasad to Haridas Thakur, and Haridas Thakur was lying in the, like, full in the back, and Govinda asked, "Hey Haridas, aren't you going to honor Mahaprasad?" I said, today I don't want to eat the prasad because I have not finished my rounds yet. But at the same time, I have to honor prasad also. So Haridas Thakur took a little prasad and then started his chanting. Hearing this news, when Mahaprabhu came next day, when Mahaprabhu said, "Hey Haridas, are you well?" Haridas Thakur says, "My body is very well, my body is very fit, but my mind and my intelligence is not good. I am not able to complete my rounds." Mahaprabhu said, "Hey Haridas, you are Namacharya. You have done what you have came to this world." Same thing Shri Krishna also said to Sanatan Goswami when Sanatan Goswami was doing Govardhan Parikrama, saying, "Hey Baba, you don't have to do Govardhan Parikrama. You are old, you take rest." And same Haridas Thakur also. But still Haridas Thakur said, "No, I have to finish my rounds." And then after the afternoon pastimes, when Mahaprabhu again came next day, and when he took Haridas Thakur on his lap and loudly chanting Hare Krishna, like Mahaprabhu has got 5 heads chanting Harinam, and Vakreshwar Pandit, all big Mahaprabhu's Parshad, they loudly doing Kirtan and taking Haridas Thakur to the Mahatirtha, and where Haridas Thakur Samadhi is there. Why explaining? Because we see from Dittasur to Bhishma Pitamaha to Haridas Thakur to our Gurudev to Prabhupada, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, Sridhar Goswami Maharaj, all very glorious. These two things are not under our control. One is where we take birth. This is not in our control. Anyone can take birth anywhere based on our karma. And where we leave our body, that is also not in our control. We might be traveling to maybe Delhi, Bangalore, or Los Angeles, Sydney. Suddenly something happens. We might leave body. We don't know. Anything can happen anytime. But to leave body in the Yogapith area, in the Antardip, I remember the last few days, just 2 days before, Shripad Avadut Maharaj with Damodar and Triloknath and others, they went to the jungle, just there. There are lots of snakes there. And literally there are snakes. There is a big cobra who stays there. We always chant Nityananda Prabhu while we pass in the evening. And that area is notoriously famous for snakes. And Shripad Avadut Maharaj doing kirtan, listening to the kirtan till late evening. They started before the sunrise, before the sunset. Then sunset happens, now it's evening, night time, still doing kirtan and continuously doing. There are mosquitoes, mosquitoes, snakes, still relishing the Yogapith and this Shiva Sangan Bhuvi, Golokero Premadhano, Harinama Sankirtana. So this glorious death, glorious passing by, is indeed very glorious. It's not in everyone's fortune. So we must understand, these days when people have got cancer, any other disease, they will rush towards America to get the cure. There are advanced medical technologies, biotechnologies, and someone coming here without Mahaprabhu's mercy, without Radharani's mercy, it is not possible. And also when Avadut Maharaj just passed away, I had the opportunity to sing Shri Rupa Manjari Pada and all our Vaishnav songs. So, till the time he was here, it was a festive atmosphere. And another secret I will tell based on my experience. If Avadut Maharaj, if Radharani wanted, or if Avadut Maharaj wanted, he could have passed on Gaur Purnima time as well. But he just passed just 7 days, just the Ekadashi before Gaur Purnima, because he did not wanted Gaur Purnima festival to be overshadowed by his passing away. So that's why he took the Ekadashi or the Dwadashi day just before Gaur Purnima. And that time, everywhere there is Harinam Sankirtan happening all across Navadvip. All Tridandi Paths, sannyasis, Shripad Sajjan Maharaj, Shripad Padmanabh Maharaj, Raghav Maharaj, from Sridhar Maharaj, and all sannyasis from Keshavji, Devananda, Tridandi Maharaj, Tapasvi Maharaj, all sannyasis were there that time in Vrindavan, that time in this Gupta Vrindavan. If it had been now Tapasvi Maharaj is other place, Tridandi Maharaj is in Vrindavan, other, because he chose this time. It is very, if you see the divine arrangement, the time, the date, Gaur Purnima time, all sannyasis, Harinam Sankirtana, all sannyasis giving him shoulder towards this last rite. It is not a normal or a simple thing. It's very glorious. That means he was very, although I did not do much association, but looking at the characteristic, he was very simple at heart. You can sit at any place, go and jungle any place. Radharani's mercy always happened to devotees who are very saral, very innocent and very simple at heart. No hypocrisy. Like Devamai Didi said, he was saying these things openly. If I have something, telling openly. So very simple, saral, innocent at heart, and that's why this Radharani's mercy happened. So it's very glorious, and we are all very fortunate to be able to serve Maharaj. Like when Haridas Thakur was served, Mahaprabhu said, whoever came and took prasad in Haridas Thakur, because Mahaprabhu went with his gamcha and started begging alms from all the shops of Jagannath. And then someone giving little rice, then Swarup Damodar Goswami gathered little rice from all the shops, so that everyone get benefit to the Haridas Thakur's mercy. And so Mahaprabhu said, whoever did this, gave little alms, little prasad, put some sand on Haridas Thakur, put some water and participated on that celebration, they will all get Krishna Prem. So similarly, we are also very fortunate to be able to participate in this ceremony. And thank you for everyone to come and making them participate. That's why I specially invited Murari Gupta, because Murari Gupta Pujari, so he also came, and I also invited Shivas Angan and others just to have some prasad. Because if we are taking Vaishnavas in our Vedic tradition, it is a tradition to give prasad to all Vaishnavas. So we are very fortunate, all Vaishnavas are gathered. Hare Krishna.
Jnanatimirandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshrumitam Jnana Tasmai Shri Gure Namah Gurve Guru Chandraya Radhikaya Tadalaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namah.
Is Murari Gupta Ramji's mala for
Dandavat Pranam to Pujapad Bhaktivedanta Avadut Maharaj. Mahaprabhu asked Roy Ramananda if Vaishnavas experience pain, what is that pain? And Roy Ramananda explained the only pain Vaishnavas experience is that of separation of other Vaishnavas. So, as one devotee had said, that this is a simultaneous it's simultaneous despondent that we're sad that we don't have Avadut Maharaj's association, but we're very happy because he had a very powerful and exemplary and auspicious Tiruba of leaving this manifest plane that we're on. So one senior and elevated Vaishnava in Vrindavan told me that when I was coming here, he said, you should know that your godbrother, Pujyapat Avadut Maharaj, he has entered into, as he explained, Vastu Siddhi, entered into the pastimes of Mahaprabhu, where he's performing his pastimes somewhere in this universe, or some universe. He's entered into those pastimes. He was so glorious, a Vaishnava, dedicated to his Gurudev and his Shiksha Guru and Sannyas Gurudev's mission throughout his entire life, and it was so exemplary. I never perceived one time with Pujyapat Avadut Maharaj that he exhibited anger. And he had so much compassion and so much deep sincerity and so much tolerance. And very simple. Damodar, I won't read it, but Damodar Prabhu was talking about his trip to Ekachakra. I think it was 2019 or something. So there weren't facilities there because they arrived late. He was. I remember when Gurudev gave him sannyas in 2004 or 5. It was so, we were curious, what will his name be? And when he said Avadut Maharaj, we just thought, perfect name. He was so transcendently Avadut. So he arrived in Ekachakra, and there was no place to stay. So one Indian gentleman, who happened to be the person that donated ISKCON property, he noticed two Vaishnavas, and he approached Avadut Maharaj and one other devotee, I forget the other devotee. And he said, oh, who are you? Where have you come? And how? So through that meeting, he found out that Avadut Maharaj and the other devotee, Markandeya Prabhu, he's from Hawaii. They didn't have a place to stay, so he arranged next door to ISKCON. They're using it now as a goshala, a place for cows. But it was if you knew Avadut Maharaj, any place was suitable. He was so renounced and so simple and so simple-hearted wherever he stayed. And Markandeya Prabhu commented on his glorification of Avadut Maharaj that he only traveled with very, very few things. He never met. We know some sannyasis, they travel with so much things, but Avadut Maharaj, just you could put it in one back. Shoulder back, and one or two devotees, including the one he was wearing. He had one extra devotee, just some very, very simple Vaishnava, so exemplary and humble. And at the same time, he had so much exuberance and sincerity in following Hari Guru and Vaishnavas in his character, in his activities. Always where he traveled, performing Harinam, Nagar Sankirtan. Always. And I first met him in San Diego it was after they had moved from 3rd Avenue and near Balboa Park, but they moved to the beach temple, and I met him there. As Jayanta spoke and Sadananda Prabhu spoke, they started a very successful company, partially because of his expertise and his wonderful ideas to market so many things. And then I remember they took sannyas in 2004, 2005, received the name Avadut Maharaj, and already I had met him in different places preaching, because I would go to South America and Central America and Mexico places since I spoke first a little bit of Spanish, and then it just grew and grew and grew. In fact, when we were in one place, and I was told Avadut Maharaj, I said, you speak a little Spanish, you know, I think you will pick it up very quickly, which he did. He picked up Spanish so quickly and he spoke to so many people in their native language. I don't want to take much time, but my appreciation and this whole assembly that we're having today in the Chaitanya Charitamrita is that the perfection of the eyes is to see the pure Vaishnava. The perfection of the touch is to touch that Vaishnava, especially their holy lotus feet. And the perfection of the ears is to hear the Harikatha from the Vaishnava, and especially, and also to take his remnants. Bhakta Paraduli, Bhakta Parajal, Bhakta Bhuta, Avisheshatinoval. Three things are very powerful. The water that washes the Vaishnava's lotus feet, the transcendental dust of his lotus feet, and the transcendental remnants of that Vaishnava, especially his transcendental remnants of him coming from his mouth in the form of Harikatha. So we're perfecting by hearing the glories of this extremely elevated Vaishnava, and I'm hearing many things that put it deeper in my understanding of how elevated my godbrother was, because sometimes due to familiarity you don't realize the extreme effect that Vaishnava has on other persons that are in association with him. So, Maharaj, please forgive me if I've ever treated you familiarly and had that interrupt my understanding of your true glories. We're so blessed with this association, and we're perfecting our ears by hearing the glories of this wonderful Vaishnava, Pujapad Bhaktivedanta Avadut Maharaj. And we pray to him to please, he's explained how he's in the hearts of all of his followers and disciples always, but he's also present by our prayers. We ask him to give us his blessings so that we may be diligent on this process like he was, very, very dedicated and sincere, and very strict with himself, but lenient with others. Our tendency is to be strict with others and lenient with ourselves, and he exhibited this very, very powerfully. Pujapad Bhaktivedanta Avadut Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Ho.
Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Mahabhadunyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Tvishe Nama. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vrindai Tulsi Debai Priyai Keshavasya Cha Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavachai Namo Namaha
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Everyone, Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. One more, Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Sripad Bhaktivedanta Avadut Maharaj Ki Jai. So, my dear God brother, fellow disciple of our beloved Srila Prabhupada, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada, and also fellow Siksha disciple of our beloved Guru, Siksha Gurudev Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Ashtottara Shri Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, and one who also honored and worshipped Srila Gaur Govinda Goswami Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj. So I'm remembering my god brother, and I was fortunate to be here in his final days. This was unexpected, as always it was, that Avadut Maharaj would arrive somewhere, right? But then suddenly one day I heard he's here at Bhaktivedanta Kunj in Mayapur. Okay. So I came to see him as soon as I possibly could, and I remember seeing him at that point because I understood already that his condition had deteriorated, because I heard from our Pujapad Shanta Maharaj, who had seen him in some recent months in America. And so I understood that now this cancer is becoming more progressed, and so it must be the time now when it's time for him to go. And when I came up to his room here and entered his room, then I could immediately see, oh, he's simply come here to leave this body. It's time. It's absolutely time. And pretty much all of us could also see that. He came here to Mayapur with utter determination. Because I also heard how he booked his own ticket, and what we just heard from Damodar. My cancer is gone, and I'm feeling quite fit. I'm coming there to Mayapur. So I was able to also be along with his personal servants, Devendranath, Damodar, Trilokanath, Sahadev Prabhu, who did tremendous, wonderful service for him in these final days. But just as we heard from Sukanta Prabhu, this was a very powerful experience. This place was very transcendentally surcharged. Because he was here and in such high level of consciousness. And this is one thing I noticed immediately. Despite the fact that he was very, at least the day when I came in to see him, you know, he was sitting up, but it was very obvious that he was very tired. And after some short time, then he also chose to lie down. But in seeing him, and also his speech was not so audible at that time. It was not so easy to make out what he was saying. But one thing I noticed is that he was completely tuned in to everything that was being spoken, everything that was being expressed by others. And somehow or other, I just got into a mood of wanting to
just reminisce a little bit. And somehow it came into my mind, because now Avadut Maharaj had come here to Mayapur, right near the Yog Peeth of Mahaprabhu. He had come from right near to Mayapur. So I somehow began to think about the first time that I came to Mayapur. And Avadut Maharaj was also aware of those times when we were with Srila Prabhupada here, when we were with Srila Prabhupada here, and Gaur Purnima time, and all of that. And so I just began to talk freely, and Avadut Maharaj was also hearing, and there were some other devotees in the room, they were also hearing, and it just turned into a very blissful remembrance of how we came on the plane from New York the first time that I came to India. I was describing the story, and he was completely listening and relishing, you know. And then, as I was describing that, then I also explained how we came first time to see the Yog Peeth as we were driving by in the buses, and how there was also so much remembrances about Srila Prabhupada arriving the next morning in his car, and how there was only rice fields, all of these things. So it just turned into this sweet atmosphere. And I could understand that he had come here to just relish and taste as much as possible prior to his departure. And a couple of days later, I came here to give a class, and when I arrived, he was sitting right there. Actually, almost lying down, but he wanted to hear. And we were reading the end of our Navadvip Dham Mahatmya, description of Lord Nityananda Prabhu's parikrama with Jiva Goswami in Navadvip Dham. So we were completing that, and we had to give 2 more classes to complete that during this time. So Avadut Maharaj was so very much, as I've heard again and again from all the speakers, practically everybody that spoke, Avadut Maharaj had such qualities that just shined forth from him, although he was one of the most unbecoming devotees that I think I've ever met, who actually had such a high level of good qualities, such a strong determination to serve Guru and Gauranga and to preach, that his whole life, when I began to reflect upon his life was complete sacrifice. There was never a time in his life where there was some kind of sense gratification direction. No, it was all for seva. I mean, even the story that we just heard about how he started the prasadam business, and they had that, but it was all for preaching. It was all for seva, you know. And so, although I didn't know Avadut Maharaj prior to around the mid-90s, I met him in Los Angeles. Only briefly met him, but I really didn't know him. I had heard, there's this devotee named Upananda who spent nearly 10 years in Africa. And I could relate with that because I also had spent a couple of years in Africa, although I was on the East Africa, he's on the West Africa side. And my name was Urukram and his name was Upananda, so the that I connected with him. But, you know, to understand what that means, not an easy thing to be in Africa preaching, you know. Tremendous austerities and what he would have to undergo to be there constantly for so many years. But then I began to hear that he was also a pioneer in Australia. He also had something to do with the preaching in China. And when our Gurudev, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj, came the first time to Russia, in Moscow in the year 2000. I was very fortunate to be involved in coming there to Russia the previous year and introducing him for the first time to all the Russian devotees. And then the next year, in the year 2000, then Gyanadas, now Nemi Maharaj, he also came, and we traveled all over Russia announcing that this pure devotee, Srila Narayan Maharaj, is coming. And when Gurudev arrived, he also was he just completely melted all the devotees' hearts. When he came off the plane and came down the escalator, 80, 100 devotees were waiting, and they were all weeping and weeping. Then he came in the vehicle to the place of we had arranged for the festival, a big kind of not resort. It was pretty ratty conditions, but it was, it's Russia after the communist period. So we did the best we could. And when he came there was another 120 devotees waiting as he pulled up in this big van that we had to drive him from the airport. And he came out, and he walked up on these maybe about 10 steps and stood there. There was a platform, the entrance to this big building where he would have his programs. And when he stood there, then he looked out at the Russian devotees, and they were all weeping. And then Gurudev said, I remember when the Russian devotees were being placed in prison, and how this could happen, only because they were chanting and preaching the names of Krishna. So I was praying for them as they were in the prison for their release. And very soon after that, they were released. And then he looked at all the devotees and he says, I have come for all of you. So who was there? Avadut Maharaj, before he took sannyas. He also helped to finance the ticket of Gyanadas to travel all over Russia. He also somehow or other equipped us by buying a laptop so that we could stay in touch. These were the beginning days of internet communications and all that. So what I've seen is that Avadut Maharaj had no attachment at all to any money, any kind of comforts, any kind of name or fame, things that people desire. He had no desire for that. I can remember because Nischinta Didi told about a pair of socks. But that was one of my first, in Los Angeles, probably around 94, 90, something, when the Rose Temple, when they first moved into the Rose Temple. And Gurudev came and visited, And I saw Upananda Prabhu at that time, and I saw how he had already received saffron cloth from Gurudev. I could see how his clothing was disheveled and not matching, and then I noticed that he had 2 different color socks on, and so I actually approached him because we used to go, as we were traveling around the world, we would buy a big bundle of socks from Costco or somewhere like that, So I came to him one day and I said, 2 pairs of socks, and I offered it to him. And he just was so disinterested, like I was gonna hurt his mood, So I watched Avadut Maharaj through all those years, from the time that especially also took sannyas in 2004 or 5, until this time. That was practically 20 years. And Avadut Maharaj never stopped traveling. This is the amazing thing. Like I said, even during the lockdowns, when I'm locked down in Badger, California for 2 whole years, Avadut Maharaj was still moving here and there, and nothing would stop his travel. Preaching, 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 always.
you know. And I also had a chance to be with him in Florida once for a week. We shared the same apartment where we were staying, and I watched his sadhan bhajan and how he conducts himself and everything. I always had so much admiration for him because he was truly, genuinely, very vairagya vidya, nija bhakti yogam. He was completely detached and full of knowledge, full of vidya. So, and this carried through right up until the very end when he was in, we just imagine so much suffering condition when I saw his, you know, but he was never expressing any kind of discomfort, pain, nothing, you know. And so I just feel myself fortunate, especially to have come here today and heard firsthand from the mouths of the devotees so many wonderful memories and glorifications. I think that this recording of all these devotees speaking should be broadcast everywhere on internet, YouTube channels, Facebook, whatever, so everyone can hear who is this person, Avadut Maharaj, you know. So just one last thing, his name Avadut. And everybody has mentioned Avadut, Avadut all during this time. But Sripad Avadut Maharaj was very interested, extremely attracted to the supreme Avadut. And who is that? Nityananda Mahajan. And Nityananda Prabhu was always distributing the holy names, going to the lowest persons, everything. Nityananda Prabhu. So therefore, Nityananda brought him here, and Gauranga Mahaprabhu brought him here, and arranged for him to depart on that most auspicious day, at that most auspicious time, and in the most auspicious location you could want. And that was proof in itself how very glorious was his life. So I said it in the beginning that I see him to be a very extraordinary disciple of Srila Prabhupada, Siksha disciple of Srila Narayan Maharaj, follower of Gaur Govinda Maharaj, and sannyas, disciple of Srila Narayan Maharaj. And he served in such an exemplary way for his whole life. So that is why I feel that, you know, he's kind of on that same level that I mentioned about Jayananda Prabhu, who Srila Prabhupada directly told, you know. And there's no question about it that Avadut Maharaj is in such a high situation. Of course, we cannot know fully, because only Krishna knows that. Only the exalted associates of the Lord, they know. But just like on almost the last day before he left, I came in front of him and our eyes met. At that time he could not really communicate anymore, but our eyes met, and I just looked at him and I said, Maharaj, you are going to such a high destination. And that was my last communication with him. So, you know, his passing, his ceremony of being brought to the Ganga, and the cremation and all of that was so powerful to be there and to witness that and to be present. So I think that the glories of Avadut Maharaj are going to live forward into the future directly, because he was such he stood out in such a way that he had no desire to stand out at all. But he stood out with the mood of not wanting to stand out. And that humility, that clear
personification of the third shloka of Sikshastakam, Trinada Pisu Nichena, Torora Pisa Hishnuna, Amanina, Manadena, Kirtaniya Sadahari. He was really like the personification of that, and therefore he was always chanting, always preaching, always broadcasting the name of Krishna. So I'm praying in this assembly today to pay my Dandavat pranams at his divine lotus feet and to pray for his mercy, because he's in such a place now that he can really shower mercy on all of us. And he actually said that also to the Indian-bodied sannyasis from Keshavji Gaudiya Math, Ban Maharaj, Sridhar Maharaj, who else? Siddhanti Maharaj, when they came to him. And they told him, we're praying for you, Maharaj. And then he said to them, yes, I'm also praying for you. So this is Avadut Maharaj, great, great servant of Srila Prabhupada. And I'm sure that he is looking down at us as we are remembering him and giving his blessings to us. Gaur Premanandi. Shripad Avadut Maharaj Ki Jai. Bhaktivedanta Avadut Maharaj Ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi. Vansha kalpatarubhascha kripa sindhubheva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. So what is next? Is there any Sukanta Prabhu? What we should do now? Oh, okay, then we should have short kirtan. Yes, okay.
Is there flowers?
Flowers? Pushpanjali and Kirtan.
Yeah, there are flowers to offer them? Okay, we can give them. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
जय सपरिकार गौरंग गिरिधारी राग विनोदी हरि की जय जय नित्य नील विष्णु विष्णुपाद सरस्वती श्री श्री देसी भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्री प्रभुपाद की जय नित्य नील विष्णु विष्णुपाद परमहंस सरस्वती श्री श्री भक्तिवेदांत नारायण गोस्वामी महाराज की जय नित्य नील विष्णु विष्णुपाद सरस्वती श्री श्री भक्ति रक्षक श्रीधर गोस्वामी महाराज की जय शिव भक्ति वेदांत वामन गोस्वामी महाराज की जय भक्ति वेदांत त्रिविक्रम गोस्वामी महाराज की जय जय नित्य नील विष्णु विष्णुपाद सरस्वती श्री शिव भक्ति प्रज्ञान केशव गोस्वामी महाराज की जय नित्य नील विष्णु विष्णुपाद सरस्वती श्री शिव Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Mahabhagavat Srila Gaurkishore Das Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Shri Srila Sachidananda Bhaktivedanta Thakur ki jai. Vaishnav Sarvabhaum Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Jai Shri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath Sadhguru Swami Prabhu ki jai. Srila Sarup Damodar Roy Ramanandari Gaur Parsada Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem Sibo Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Navadvipa Dhama ki jai. Shri Antardvip Mayapur Dhama ki jai. Jai Shri Purushottam Kshetra Jagannath Puri Dhama ki jai. Jai Shri Braj Mandala Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Govardhan Dwara Shivanatmaka Shri Braj Mandala Dham ki jai. Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Yamuna Ganga Tulsi Bhakti Devi ki jai. Jai Shri Giriraj Govardhan ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Sudarshan Chakrajiv ki jai. Bhakti Vigna Vinashana Shri Nrsimhadev ki jai. Bhakta Prabhu Shri Prahlad Maharaj ki jai. Charodam Charo Sampradaya Charo Acharya ki jai. Akara Matraj Shri Chaitanya Mat ki jai. Aurananya Shakamat Samuha ki jai. Shri Vishwa Vaishnavaraj Sabha ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Tribhuvana Pavana Harinam Sankirtana ki jai. Tribhuvan Mangala Harinam Prabhu ki jai. Hare Krishna Mahamantra ki jai. Sachidanand Gaura Hari ki jai. Shri Nityananda Mahajana ki jai. Shri Pancha Tattva ki jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Shri Avadut Maharaj ki jai. Vrindai Tulsidevai Priyai Keshava Saja Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Sajavachai Namo Namaha Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo